City Commission meeting of Tuesday, September 25th, 2018. Let the record show that all commissioners are present. First item is the order of business. Mrs. Carlson, any changes to the order of business?
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the commission. Yes, there is a couple changes. Under engineering, there will be a B for reports. It will be Crooked Crane Trail application, and that's just a report. Under Public Works, under the B report, number 2, we are removing. That was to be at a different meeting.
Okay.
And then under 7 Planning, we will add D. There is an Odyssey Sidewalk Maintenance Agreement that will also be presented by Attorney Murtha. And that would be all. Oh, excuse me. Under the executive sessions, under commission, there is an actual, another executive session for the city administration contract.
All right. Is that it for changes?
That would be it.
Any questions for Mrs. Carlson on the changes? Hearing no questions or comments, look for a motion on the order of business.
Make a motion to approve the order of business as amended.
We have a motion to approve the order of business as amended.
Second.
With a second. Any further discussion? Questions for staff? Not all in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The order of business is approved. The consent agenda. Is there anything on the consent agenda that commissioners would like to discuss? Not, I'd look for a motion on the consent agenda.
Mr.
Move to
President.
approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve. The second. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? Not, we'll vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion is approved on the consent agenda. We have one timetable this evening, 5 p.m., public hearing on our 2019 annual appropriation ordinance. We'll move into the administration and finance, and the first item up is Mr. Hirschfeld and Vanguard agreements. Welcome, Mr. Hirschfeld.
Good morning, Mr. President, or good evening, Mr. President and Commissioners. Bring before you 2 contracts this evening for a revaluation project. The first for consideration would be for the 2019 valuation year. It would be a market study only, so there would be no physical inspection. We'd be assuming condition of the properties as they were the last time the reval was completed, which was in 2014 for the 2015 year. This is a budgeted item, and the estimate on that is to be $30,000 or less. And just asking you to please accept this contract. It'll allow us to have a little extra help in completing our work this year, looking at doing land study, maybe working on some depreciation tables, and just overall trying to rebalance this market as it changes, and do that ahead of the next full revaluation. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to entertain them.
Any questions for Mr. Hirschfeld? Hearing no questions, I'd look for a motion on this item.
Mr. President, I'd move we approve.
We have a motion to approve the agreement with Vanguard.
Second.
Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The agreement, motion to approve the agreement is approved.
Thank you very much.
Next up is the market reval.
Excuse me. Bringing before you consideration to do a full revaluation like what was performed in 2014. The date of date evaluation for this would be for the 2014 year, work commencing in 2013. So we'd be 10 years since the last one when this gets completed.
You mean 2023, we're for 2024?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm sorry. The Total value is not set because we're always adding properties or maybe combining them. But if you look at the second page on that, the per parcel value is what is set in this contract. And just looking at kind of a placeholder, wanted to point out also that he did kind of sneak us in on that 2023 being the year of starting our work on that, ahead of some properties that'll be, or 20, yes, in 2025. So I really don't want to push this one off too long because we're looking at maybe delaying this whole project a couple of years, maybe up to 3 years, the way that they're filling up their schedule. So it's something we should really look hard at and make sure that we get on their list if we want to have Vanguard come back and do this for us again.
Mr.
Questions?
Yeah, Mr. Hirschfeld. So if we approve this for 2023 or 2024, whatever, I mean, are we going to be put on their list at least as a placeholder so we don't have to wait every 10 years? Because isn't this supposed to be a 7-year thing?
IAAO suggests that it's done every 7 years. So certainly if that's what we'd like to do, we would enter into a contract with them so every 7 years that they would come back out and do that. That wasn't something that was done when we completed the last revaluation, was to set up the new one. So we're before you now trying to make sure we get on their list.
I don't think we can bind future commissions, can we? But can we get on their list to call us like 3 years out or a year out or something like that to say, you're coming up, do you still want us to do it?
Commissioner Friedrich, that's exactly how we did it last time. We was on their list with the understanding we couldn't bind the future boards. So just more or less a gentleman's agreement that yes, that's our placeholder. It is the City of Dickinson's intent to have this done. And if for any reason we would decide not to, it'd be nice, I'm sure, to let them know immediately. But, every 2 years we could kind of review that, make sure that that current board still wants to be part of that contract and either release them from that or ourselves. And, and just so we're not binding that future board.
Because we'd be looking at 31 then, 2031? If we did a 7-year after the 24.
You're looking at doing a 7-year, yes.
I'm just saying get on their list because obviously it takes 10 years to get them back, so.
I see your point. Yes, it probably wouldn't hurt to see if we couldn't get on a 7-year schedule with them if that's the schedule we like to keep.
Thoughts?
I wish we could have, did we have a gentleman's agreement in 2014 to be on 2021 or no?
We did not set anything up for any future date past that 2014 at that time. It was certainly discussed many times with the board prior to yourselves. And it just, one of those, such a big ticket item that, and there are so many other needs that I think it was just kind of kicked down the road, if you will, and we're to that point where we need to make sure we get on a list or we're going to be beyond 10 years.
Maybe 10 years is a fine number. Maybe we do it every 10 years, but I mean.
I think we should just be on the list, and then the future commissioners can decide if they want to have it in 2031, but we need to look at getting this one done in 2024, 23. My only question would be the comparative to the last eval. What are the 380 per improved parcel? What was it last time?
That is a very good question, Commissioner, or President Decker, that I did not come prepared.
I'm just looking at, are we double in price?
Just eyeballing this, I think we're a little higher. I do not believe it's doubling. Going off memory, I want to say we were maybe 250 or 275 for a small parcel and 1,000 or 1,250 for the large parcel. So it's up a little bit.
Do you remember what the last appraisal cost or assessment cost, citywide assessment?
The last commercial revaluation, I believe, was $380,000, and then we did some follow-up work that probably had us close to $420 or $430 total.
So we're almost double with the projection at
Well, that's-
672,000.
That's what I'm looking at.
I don't think we want to bind any board to that.
I want to get on the list, but I want,
Thing is, if we don't enter into this agreement, in 2 years, that'll be another 2 years, or 3 years, or 4 years. I mean, how farther out?
So this was submitted to you in July, of the 31st of July? Did I read it?
That is correct.
Trustee Decker,
Yes.
if I may I ask Joe a question? With this amount that you're proposing now for the 2024, and if the commissioners did put this, does this amount stay put?
The per parcel amount does, the total amount doesn't, because the
Right.
parcel numbers may vary.
Yep, okay.
And if it pleases the commission, we could certainly maybe table this till next meeting if you'd like me to review what the per parcel value or cost was last time.
I would see like the comparison. 'Cause I know there's inflation, but this seems a lot more than a 3 or 4%
Then again,
inflation.
but you're looking at 10-year span, too,
Right.
from the last
But-
time they did. I mean, if you take 3 or 4% a year, that's a standard inflation, I mean, times 10 years, that adds up pretty fast.
I think I would just like to see like what it cost us per parcel last time. It's not going to matter 2 weeks on this.
I wouldn't think so. They've been very good to work with, and I'm sure they'd hold this another couple weeks for us.
I'd like to see the difference.
Okay?
I don't know if the rest.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm totally fine with it, so.
We'll, I think we'll table this, and then if you get us those totals, it'd be appreciated, and then we can see what the exact difference is.
Very good.
So I'd look for a motion to table this agreement for the market reval for 2024.
So move.
Second.
Any further discussion or questions for Mr. Hirschfeld? We'll vote. Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The motion to table is approved. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
City Attorney Murtha, you have the ordinance to amend the city police pension and employee pension.
I do. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, this is a proposed ordinance, and to give you a little background on it, it relates to the city's closed defined benefit plan, and the changes that are being proposed tonight are changes that are required by the IRS for the plans to keep their tax status. We do need to tell you that actually these changes were communicated by an outside consultant, and were in 2015, and were asked by the city to amend the plan document, which is your ordinances for public pension plans. At that time, I can't speak to why it didn't happen then, but it needs to happen now. So we do need to make these changes, and the IRS back in 2015, when the city went through, at the time the IRS was offering a program to public pension plans. It was a cycle program where you submitted your plan documents, and they would review them and say, and give you a determination letter, basically saying, it looks good to us, everything's okay. And if they found things that they wanted you to change, they would tell you during that process. The IRS within the last year has gotten out of the determination letter process. They're just not doing them anymore. So they're not giving public employers that preview, we're going to look at it. But this is something that they did do in 2015. This is the exact language that the IRS okayed at that time. It wasn't done when it was supposed to be done. So what we have to do now, and it is something that we spoke to, again, our outside consultant about preparing for us, is the IRS also offers a voluntary compliance program. I think the cost for that is they estimated for us about $3,000. You go through it and say, basically, here are the changes that you told us to make. They were not made in a timely manner. They are made now. Are we okay? and you pay the fee, they look it over, and generally speaking, they say, yes, it's okay, but we're going to charge you some money. So if you have any questions with regards to the background on this, I'm afraid I won't be able to offer you any more than I have, but I know that this was discussed in City Administrator Carlson is aware of kind of the background on this a little bit more than I am. If you have questions about the language that's being proposed, I'd be happy to answer those. So essentially what it does, the fire plan was already, had this language in it, so it did not need to be updated, but the DB plan and the police plan did not. And that was a change of the level of distribution of when you have to refund the account balance. It used to be capped at 10,000. The IRS dropped that down to 1,000. So if you have 1,000 or less, the participant, when they leave employment, they even if they're vested, they have to be refunded that amount out of the plan. And then if it's between 1,000 and 10,000, it will be again paid in a single sum cash payment as soon as feasible after the participant requests payment after termination of employment. So those were, and those same changes were made in both plans, and those were the changes at the time. I will note that there was one thing in here that that didn't relate to that, and it was just, I believe it was a what I would call a Scrivener's error, which was it was a change that you made back in 2010, but for some reason. And it was an error, and it was never, the plan has never been administered this way. But in the main plan, the last day of the month, when we're talking about under, let's see, under section 1, if you go all the way down, under subsection D, it changes the age from 55 to 62. It was never 55 for the main plan. It was always 62. That was cleaned up in 2010 for whatever reason. That particular little change didn't make it in. So we're just adding it in now for anybody who looks online and sees the code, but that you officially, or the commission officially made that change in 2010. So it's kind of a typo correction. But other than that, that's the language. And we would request first reading and approval at this time, and a public hearing will be set up for the second reading at the next meeting. And at that time, we'll also bring back to you not an ordinance, but the defined contribution plan needed to be, that plan document also needed by resolution to be certified. So we're just doing it at the end together and giving it back to our consultants to give to the IRS.
Any questions for City Attorney Murtha on this ordinance? And this ordinance will be 1663?
It will.
So, just a couple questions. How does stuff like this slip through the cracks for 5 years, 4 years?
Commissioner Frederick, at the time when this came about, was the fact is when we were looking at the bank, American Bank that we have, that takes care of our plans and our DC plans. She had asked, she kind of knew that there was supposed to be a plan that was adopted in 15. When she was looking at the $1,000 limit thing that she knew for the IRS, she happened to call our finance team and said, do you have any documents? Well, at that time, no, nobody knew of any documents or anything. So we did a search, and we found it, that it was sent, but 2 of the 3 people that were on that email were no longer here anymore, that it was sent to from our consultant. And so we did find it, and then that's when I had asked Attorney Murtha to help with the consultation with the firm to find out what we needed to do now. And as their request, you propose this ordinance as is, even though the dates are the 15th, you propose it as a first reading as of now, and it'll go through, and then that takes us through that compliance program with the IRS.
And the total cost of this mistake is $3,000 plus whatever we pay our consulting firm?
That's the 3,000.
Oh, I thought that was an IRS. I thought that goes to the IRS.
That does go to the IRS.
Oh.
And then, yes, whatever they charge,
Whatever
whatever
they
the
charge.
consultant will charge us for the
I'm sorry.
phone calls. They had already prepared this documentation back in 2015.
Right.
So,
So the consultant had it in 2015?
yep, the consultant prepared the email that was found, had all of the attachments, the proposed ordinance that you see before you. Really, the only thing I did was to go in and underline the new language because it hadn't been underlined. But other than that, they had provided all the documentation back then.
So it's sitting in 2 emails from employees that are no longer with us.
3 emails. It was sitting in 3 emails, and 2 had already been gone since 15.
I think, again, this means we need to look at, as an administration, how we're doing transitions when employees are leaving. When stuff like this is sitting in their box and they just leave. And we can't assume that things like this are getting taken care of, because it could have been a lot more painful than $3,000.
Correct.
So I guess we, like I said, as an administration, we need to look at the plan on when employees leave, how we're gonna flush out the important items that are possibly sitting in emails or just sitting in boxes somewhere. So, any other questions or comments?
I would imagine this is unbudgeted.
This will go through the finance we have on our audit and professional services line. This will fit in that budget. We'll be fine.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments?
Other than, have we had any employees leave that we didn't do it right, or?
At this time, the process is if somebody leaves, there's somebody that's either above or on a straight line that receives their emails at the same time until that position is filled, and then they can, so that there's always somebody else that's receiving those emails from the person that had left.
I'm just talking employees that left, that did we pay them outright, or is there any?
Oh, yes, the plans, they're being taken care of correctly
Okay.
and stuff, yes. It was just that their documentation was missing, and that's what brought this whole thing about, and was asking for the documentation so that they had it.
And at this time, Linda, all 3 individuals that were on that 2015
Are
email
gone.
are no longer with the city.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Public hearing on 1663 will be our next scheduled meeting, so I'd look for a motion on the first reading of ordinance 1663.
Move to approve ordinance 1663.
We have a motion to approve,
Second.
with a second. Any further discussion or questions? Now, we'll vote. Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Friedrich?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Wallop?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion is approved on the first reading of ordinance 1663. We have nothing from public safety this evening. Mr. Kubis, engineering's up. Apex task
Yes,
order.
thank you, President, Members, Commissioners. Before you is a master task order agreement with Apex Engineering Group. We've seen several of these in the past, I think most recently with Wank and Associates. We also have the same agreement in place, or very, very similar agreement in place with KLJ and with Highlands Engineering. So this is a base agreement that we've had with Apex since 2013. There's a new version of the agreement out there, so when this new version came up, and it came through us through a different consultant. Ms. Murtha had reviewed it, and we did ask for some changes to be made to the base agreement, and those included removing some insurance requirements that are placed on the city. It's not typical that we cover our consultants as an additional insured, so that was removed. We added some confidentiality language and some language regarding compliance with open records laws. This agreement, if you remember in the past with these other similar master task order agreements, it doesn't bind the city to any financial commitment to Apex or to any project commitment to Apex. It just serves as the framework for any future work that we would enter into an agreement with Apex Engineering Group. So Staff has reviewed the agreement and would recommend approval. With that, I'd open it up for any questions you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Kubus? Hearing no questions or comments on this task order, I'd look for a motion.
Mr. President, I move we approve task order.
We have a motion to approve with a second. Any further discussion or questions on the task order? Now we'll vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Wallach? Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The Apex Task Order Agreement is approved. We have a report next. Mr. Kubus?
Yes, thanks for sneaking me in before the timetable. I heard Mr. Shear wasn't as lucky last meeting, but the Crooked Crane Trail was a project that we've been discussing at the task force level for the last year or so. And sorry, the graphics are a little bit hard, but these will be the graphics that we anticipate to supply to the Outdoor Heritage Fund for a grant that's due. Two meetings ago, I believe it was 2 meetings ago, we hired KLJ to put this grant application together. They've got some exhibits and have made some contacts with the railroad. As part of that grant application, though, it asks for the consent of the head of the organization. So what I'm asking for really today is the consent that we submit the grant application. And I'll try and quickly highlight, just as a brief reminder, high-tech remotes. So the trail, this is our State Avenue Bridge right around here, and then the trail would follow along the railroad right away, touch the Turtle Park area, come back into the railroad right of way, around the golf course, back into the railroad right away, and then would cross the lake, connecting back to, you can see the 2 figure-8s, or the figure-8 trail that we constructed 2 years ago. So there's a couple other exhibits. This one's just a blow-up of what we would be looking to construct. Again, generally you can see a little bit better following in the railroad right-of-way.
Mr. Kubus, at the trailhead, is there a parking lot proposed?
There is not right now. So the trailhead, I guess as it would be right here, this would connect right into the 10-foot trail that comes off of the State Avenue Bridge, right at the end of Palm Beach Road and West Broadway. So this is essentially right at the underpass of the new bridge, or right in one of those lanes. Possibility that there could be room for a trailhead. The trailhead, if you were to park and drive out to it, would really be this parking area where
We have the parking lot there, so.
Right, there's a parking lot in Turtle Park, and then by the fishing pier. So.
Well, that's why I was wondering, maybe we designate, so people aren't confused, you designate a trailhead in Turtle Park there, and that's just a connector.
Certainly could, yeah. The parking lot, the trailhead would be there already. Maybe just be some minor signing to, and we could also annotate this map likewise. And then again, on the far western end, no trailhead. Again, it ties directly into the trail that we've constructed. A trailhead per se would be that parking lot area where the boat ramp and the game and fish office is in Dickinson. So just real briefly wanted to touch on what we've learned through the process, or that KLJ's learned through the process. We visited with the railroad. Their requirement right now, and I think they leave that open for future conditions, was a 50-foot separation from the tracks. So this top section is actually the part that's crossing, or where Patterson Lake butts up to the railroad track. So what we would need to do to get that 50 feet of separation, to build a little buffer. They have a maintenance road there right now. Build a little buffer in between there, and then our path would start 50 feet from the center line of the tracks. And so this obviously would involve some fill out into the lake, but I think you could also make some nice amenities out there too. So this would probably be the most costly. It will be the most costly area of our trail. Bring in some fill. There's a couple culverts to extend. But this was a major hurdle that we've looked at for years and years now, and this seems to be the path that it's kind of all coming together. We've talked about a floating dock type bridge to cross this. It's about 550 feet, pretty wide open area there. I don't think anyone was extremely comfortable with that as a viable solution in a windstorm or even, in the freezing conditions. So, and then the next two exhibits, the one on the bottom of this page and this one, really just show fitting within the right-of-way of the railroad. We have a lot of separation. I don't think the railroad has much concern here. It's really that first typical section where they might have some concerns. This is what they've told us, is to be 50 feet away, so we're meeting that right now. The cost estimate that KLJ has put together right now is construction dollars 1.25 million with some contingencies added in and design engineering. It leaves a 25% local match after, which is the Outdoor Heritage Fund requires a 25% local match of around $400,000. We budgeted $350,000 for trails this year. I believe in our tax spreadsheet, though, for the 30% of the 1%, we have a substantial carryover amount in there. So that might be something that we need to look at for that extra $50,000. It was noted this $400,000 includes the engineering costs. And on the last phase of the Crooked Crane Trail, we use the engineering costs as our local match, or as a portion of the local match. So that was estimated at $175,000. So if that can be used as a portion of our local match, then that, our total local match is less than that, because we were paying that engineering already. So I guess, so big picture numbers to keep in mind: $1.25 million construction estimate with a roughly $400,000 local match. And what I'd anticipate is I would sign the application on behalf of the city. They asked for the consent of the governing body, so we can consent if we want to move ahead with that.
Mr. Kubas,
Yes.
would this be paved section then, or?
Paved section. With some of the areas that we were looking at getting into, asphalt paving, I think was
Easier?
not impossible, but pretty difficult. Gravel trail was not what I think as the task force recommended. Really didn't give that feel of a city trail. The other section of the trail is concrete, so this estimate is based on a 10-foot wide concrete section.
Can we hold right there?
Absolutely. Not quite good enough.
Not fast enough.
Sorry, my
so
question.
We just hold your questions. We have a 5 o'clock timetable. It's a public hearing for the 2019 annual appropriations ordinance. And this will be presented by Deputy City Administrator Carlson.
Thank you, President Decker. Yeah, I borrowed that. Thank you. This is the public hearing portion and the second reading, final passage of the 2019 general fund budget for us. And the table of contents, again, the budget process, the budget highlights, and the general fund revenue and expenses, and then expenses by categories, and those last three are in graphs. So the budget process, the first reading was on September 11th. The public hearing is today. And then the second reading and final passage will also be today, so that this can be delivered to the Stark County by the October 10th deadline. Budget highlights. 2019 general fund is balanced, and we bring it to you at $19,191,661 for revenue and expenses. And this also includes the tax levy is going to be for $4.7 million, and this is no city property tax increase, so that does not include any of that. The oil impact revenue that subsidizes the general fund would be at 4.4, almost 4.5 million, compared to 3.5 million in 2018. 2019 administrative fees from the enterprise funds to general have gone from 12, some were 12%, some were 14, and they would all come to 15% in 2019 for their administrative fees. The general fund balance did increase. We did add 2 funds into the general fund. One is our Public Works Administration, which will be subsidized by the, included in that 15%, and then the utility billing, which will also be subsidized by the 15%. So those 2 funds were added into the general fund. Our approximate health insurance, what we get from the state, is figured at a 17% for the biennial, and we will not receive exactly what it will be until closer till early spring, and then that's when we will know what it actually is. But we did predict 17% on there.
Mrs. Carlson?
Yes.
With, if it does come in at a lower, let's say 15, what does that mean to the city, that 2%? Do we have an idea of per percentage?
What will happen is, if that does come in at a lower percentage rate, then that just lowers the amount of the subsidy that we move from the oil impact fund. So that would just lower that.
But I guess what I was asking though is, do we know per percentage point what it costs the city in healthcare? Like if it is 15, how much less would that be, that 2%?
I would
Okay.
have to get that for you.
Okay.
To figure that out. Are you looking for all, like general fund and the enterprise?
I'm just looking just in this healthcare rate.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
So-
I can get that for you.
it's fine.
The increases that we are proposing would be for the commissioners, a step increase for all non-exempt employees and a 2% increase for exempt and stepped out employees. The retirement benefit change proposed from a defined contribution plan to the state North Dakota pension defined benefit plan. And that is one of the benefits that we have been looking at. In general fund, we had new positions that were proposed. There is 8, and then there would be 10 promotional positions, and that's only in the general fund. Proposed sales tax allocation money. This is for the 1%, and we had $15,000 for a wage compensation study, $50,000 for an event center feasibility study, and $250,000 for the downtown square project.
Ms. Carlson,
Yeah?
can I interrupt for a second?
Oh, yes.
Sorry, Mr. President. I've had some employees ask on the flex again, what the reduction is going towards. Could we just touch on that maybe?
Yep, I have it on the next slide if you want.
Okay, let's
Is that
wait till the next slide then.
okay?
I just saw it on the,
Yeah. Yep, and I can get into that more.
Okay.
And then $400,000 to the airport project. Those were items that we had put down as for allocation with the funding that we have coming in for the 1% sales tax. Okay, here we are. So the capital projects for 2019 is proposed at $6.75 million. And that is something that we want to make sure that we're always in the budget, is what our capital projects would be. This is the amount that we have through the capital plan. Some projects may continue throughout the year, but this is what we have for the plan on that. Okay, for the state PERS, to compensate for a state plan, the state plan is, right now we have a defined contribution amount in which the 5% of the employee plus the 5% of the employer. With this new state plan, it would be 7% employee and 8.25% for the city non-civil service. It would be for them. So what that 8.25 figures out to is 7% into their state pension plan, and 1.25 goes off to the side for a check benefit, and that is for when you have insurance and you're on your pension, you actually have a benefit of getting money that has been set aside for the employer has provided, that you will get a payment to help subsidize your insurance, your health insurance. Also, with this state plan, we have the benefit of a long-term disability, which you can qualify within 6 months. In the state plan, you're fully vested after 3 years. To get there, we have an employer flex medical benefit plan that the employer, the City of Dickinson, has always been very good about giving a medical flex plan of $450 to the employees for medical out-of-pocket costs. And with that, we would reduce that to $250 and take the $200 and support the pension liability that we as the employer has to support for raising it up by 3%, 3.25% on that. So that's where that comes in. So we're not taking it away, we are reducing it by $200 per person on that. And one of the things that was proposed when I first came in here as to look at these plans for the employees, we as the city don't have a short-term or long-term disability plan. And when we were looking at that for quotes, it was quite expensive, and we were looking at actually taking away the whole $450 just to support that. With what we have done in our interest fund for our bank accounts and renegotiation of that, plus the $200, we have sufficient funds to be able to support still giving $250 in a medical flex plan, but also supporting the amount that we would need for liability to have a state benefit pension plan. Does that help?
So the 200 is still benefiting the employee,
Oh, yes.
I mean, with added.
Yes. Yep. So to continue with that, as the third paragraph there, 2018 interest revenue, that is that fund that we set up, that the interest revenue off of our bank accounts, we have not used any of that money in 2018. So in 2019, we would, during our budget process, we have allocated some of that, $200,000 to the city defined benefit liability. That is the benefit plan, a benefit in retirement plan that we already have for the employees. So that would help that unfunded balance. $75,000 for the fire station 1 renovation, $25,000 to the general fund forestry, $50,000 to subsidize capital leases, and then $217,000 to fund the new pension plan. Did anybody else have any other questions on that portion of it? Okay. Our budgeted general fund revenue, this is just a graph showing where we have been in the last 4 years. And then the what makes up that general fund revenue, our property tax, administrative fees, our transfer ins, and then other revenues. So that's what shows on that. Okay. Our general fund expenses. Again, this is our salaries, which is the biggest portion of our expenses, our benefits, and then capital projects. And then in our, all of our categories, our general fund, our special revenue, and enterprise, this is the total of expenses in the last 4 years on that. Anybody have any questions concerning the graphs?
Any questions for Mrs. Carlson?
And I want to thank everybody and all the staff, and especially the commissioners, for taking the time for the budget process. And what we've learned in that process is that we thought it was going to be a long time, and we can get it down to almost a day now. So we feel that it's great. So.
Okay, before I open up the public hearing, any questions for Mrs. Carlson on
Just
the
that-
ordinance 1662?
Thank you for all your hard work and the staff's hard work too. It really helped us this year to see all the aspects of it, made it a lot easier, so appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, I will open up the public hearing. If you have any comments on ordinance 1662, please come forward and present your comments, concerns, or questions to the City Commission. Anyone from the public? Seeing no one from the public, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, any further questions or comments? If not, I'd look for a motion on 1660, the final reading of 1662.
Mr. President, I'd make a motion for final reading and passage of ordinance 1662.
We have a motion to approve the second reading and final passage of ordinance 1662.
Second.
With a second. Any further discussion or questions for staff? Not, we'll vote. Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The motion approves the final passage of ordinance number 1662. Mr. Kubus? Yes.
It seemed relevant, and I was multitasking over here. Indy Purge just posted today that they renewed their contract with Sanford, and but they didn't indicate the rate increase. And so I emailed the deputy CFO, and she just sent me an email back saying that it was 13.1%.
Nice.
Nice.
Very nice.
Thank you. Sorry.
Now we'll need to know the difference.
Yeah, a lot better than 17%.
It's a lot better.
So,
No, that's a
Good
lot
to hear.
better. That's good news. Thank you for that update. Mr. Kubus, you got good news?
We can afford a trail now. No. So I guess just with the background on the trail, any other questions that you might have on the trail? The application, if you remember, is due October 1st. This is kind of a tight time frame to get this in. The next application deadline, if we were hesitant and didn't want to move forward with the application in October, would be May 1st. And then after May 1st, they have a tentative deadline of October 1st next year. But there's no guarantee that the Outdoor Heritage Fund will exist through legislation. Again, it was kind of a trial fund that they had created at the state level. So we feel pretty good about it. Still some hurdles to overcome, getting confirmation from the railroad that they're completely on board. They've indicated that, we've met the conditions they've asked for now. I think we have some contingency built into here for other things that might pop up, like fencing we've talked about might be something we want to entertain, if not the railroad wanting to entertain that. So I think it would be a great project. It is about 9,000 feet long from State Avenue out to the existing Crooked Crane Trail, so almost a couple miles.
be a great addition.
Keep adding to it. Pretty soon we'll loop her around the backside.
Well, they're working on that on the Park District side at a more, I'll call it a more rural or rustic trail, just kind of a mown path right now, but certainly more probably set up for the mountain bikers, but I think with some signing it will become, and just with usage, it will become a little more permanent looking.
Well, I think the mountain biking, just the biking in general, is going to become bigger. Mott Hay Trail just made the list. We're like one of the 5th hidden gems in the United States for having a biking trail, so that always attracts people. So, Mrs. Murtha, general consensus to allow Mr. Kubis to move forward with this. Just a motion? Because we don't have it, this is just a report, so we don't have a resolution in front of us or.
Mr. Kubis, what do you need today?
So I'm just looking at the a snippet of their application. It says, I certify that this application has been made with the support of the governing body and chief executive of my organization. It doesn't necessarily have to come from the city, so it could be the CEO of a organization, but that's the exact wording out of the application that they want. The application is being made with the support of the governing body.
So what you could do today is a motion, and then at the, and that would be all the authority that Mr. Kubis would need. However, if you wanted to formalize it, afterwards, we should just bring a resolution back before you that reaffirms that this is the way you voted today.
I think that would work, unless any commissioners have objection. We have consensus?
None here.
I just have a question.
Question?
Yes.
So you said, Jason was asking at the end, and you said that it's going to be a concrete
Correct.
trail? Can I ask why it's concrete
Well,
as opposed to like asphalt?
we really went back and forth on this quite a bit and had lots of discussion. There's just some areas in here where getting an asphalt paver in is awfully difficult. So the constructability was a concern of ours. And then long-term maintenance, coming in and doing the seal coats on those asphalt trails, like they do around the community center. They should probably be doing about every 10 years. Again, it's much bigger equipment in the asphalt world than in the concrete world. So constructability was an issue, and then the ongoing maintenance in kind of a rural setting around the dike and around Patterson Lake was just something we thought, let's try and get away from that maintenance in pretty tight spot. Let's get out here, do it once, and be done with it. We have found, that asphalt trails are certainly, there is a cost savings to them, and I think there's definitely some consensus among our trails task force that in the right application, asphalt trails can stretch our dollars quite a bit. Just felt that this probably wasn't the spot for it because of the constructability issues.
Commissioner Wallace probably looking at it as a runner.
Yep.
Well,
that would be why I asked.
I have to get some Nike Airs.
Yeah.
Like, it's not on asphalt and it is concrete.
Yeah, it doesn't matter when you pound,
Better
when,
on
when,
my
Wear
old
thicker
joint.
shoes,
yeah,
thicker shoes.
Yeah, I just wondered if you're doing 10 miles.
yeah. I ran enough on asphalt and I ran enough on concrete, and I know where you're coming from. It takes toll. But, I do agree with you, to get certain pieces of equipment into certain parts of those trails is gonna be almost impossible, and it will be cost prohibitive.
Just along the dike alone, I don't know, you could get a paver through there.
Yeah, along the dike and the lake, there's certainly some tough spots to get into.
And I know people have questioned, when we did the trail up north here, why we have a section of asphalt. You have this nice paved road or
I
paved
have
path, and then you got a section of asphalt. And I know we did it for cost savings.
We did it for some cost savings, and yeah, just the timing of it worked out too. We did that with our own forces, and I anticipate we'll do many trails like that in town, where between the Park District and city forces, we can go in and do some of that work ourselves, which is a tremendous cost savings. Again, here, I just don't know that it was the best fit for the site.
President Decker and Commission, one of the reasons, too, we did that asphalt was the plan was to bring it out of the drainage and up on top. And so we didn't, at one point, didn't think that would be a long-term permanent trail in the drainage. So we just wanted to pave it so possibly be moved in a future date. But it worked very well. I think it was a good way to pave it.
I think it's just, you see concrete, and then all of a sudden you got people wonder why all of a sudden we got a section of asphalt. Somebody actually said to me, would you run out of money? And I'm like, no.
I did,
Actually,
at the League of Cities, they did have a trails breakout session. They had all the pros and cons of concrete, asphalt, gravel, and most of the cities there, Fargo was the one that put on the presentation, their Parks and Rec and their trail committee or whatever, and they're pushing mostly concrete just because of the maintenance. Again, it's easier for them to get into certain areas with a concrete pump than it is to try to bring a paver through the low areas where they're trying to put their trail system. So
What I found in my short career is that construction equipment just never gets smaller, and these specialty pavers, which we happen to have one that's not new, but it's old and it's small, so it does fit into these trails. But if you go and want to bid some of the work out for paving or the maintenance of it, that big construction equipment, one, might not fit there, and two, can do more damage to the trail than it does maintaining it. So there's certainly pros and cons, but I think my vision for it is that we'll have a mix of both asphalt and concrete. So when the situation fits, asphalt certainly can stretch those dollars quite a bit further than the concrete trails.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns for Mr. Kubis? Looks like we have consensus to give you approval, so I'd look for a motion giving Mr. Kubis the authority to apply for this grant.
Move to approve, Mr. President.
Motion to approve.
Second.
In a second. Any further discussion or questions? Now we'll vote. Mr. Steiner.
Aye.
Ms. Walla.
Aye.
Mr. Frederick.
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. You have the authority.
Thank you.
And we'll bring that back as a resolution, so. That is it, Mr. Kubis, right, for engineering?
Yes.
We'll move into Public Works. Public Works directors are off. You have a recycling transportation contract.
Yes, thank you, President Decker and Commission. As you are aware, we did put out an RFP for services for hauling our recycled material from Dickinson to Shakopee, where the DEMCON facility is, but we did not get any responses. So once that happened, we had a lot of discussions on which direction we should go. And one of the ways was to, or a couple of the options, one was to maybe buy a truck, do the hauling ourselves, put out another RFP, or when we had met with DEMCON previously, they said that if we're in a pinch, they would help us haul the material from Dickinson to Shakopee. Because we have had and continue in the last couple weeks have so many things going on with recycling, we felt it was the best, and I felt it was the best, instead of trying to add another more things to staff and another truck and staff and somebody to drive the truck, is to reach out to DEMCON, get a contract, and this one is for a 3-month initial term. We can extend it for 3 months. I feel that'll give us time to look at a little more closely at our options, whether we want to do another RFP, whether we want to do the services in-house. So this is the contract before you. As I said, it's a 3-month initial term, starting October 1st, and that was another thing with the transportation. Everything has been set for the October 1st start date, which was which we felt we could do as when recycling was directed to us over a year ago, and we are going to meet that October 1st deadline if this contract is approved tonight. So the cost is $100 per hour for hauling of the materials, and estimating at $1,800 per load. And as I said, it's a temporary contract until a long-term solution is found. City Attorney Murtha and staff and DEMCON president reviewed the terms of the contract, and so staff's recommending approval of the contract.
And if I may just add on there, the link to the contract that is on, that you have on the program, was a placeholder. It was a contract that had gone along with the RFP. It didn't have any of the information in it, but Rita had provided you all with an update to that packet on yesterday that included the contract that was modified to actually include all of the vendor information, and that is the contract that you would be approving.
Thank you, Attorney Murtha, and yeah, if there's questions with the contract, please address it, Attorney Murtha.
Any questions for Mr. Zuroff or Mrs. Murtha?
I did want to say that our recycle budget that we put together, we initially plugged in a budget of $2,000 a load, so this is within our projected budget.
And do we anticipate going back out RFP? Is there some new interest?
There has been new interest, and so, you know, at this point, we're changing a lot. We're adding a lot of duties to a lot of staff, and at this point, I really don't want to add hauling and driving over the road to Shakopee. So I think that's our first step. is to get this in place, or second step to get this in place, and then look at doing another RFP for services, because there has been new interest since we closed that.
Any other questions for Mrs. Zuroff or Mrs. Murtha? Not, I'd look for a motion on this agreement.
Move to approve, Mr. President.
We have a motion to approve the contract
Second.
with a second. Any further discussion or questions? Not, we'll vote. Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion is approved. Mr. Zuroff, you have a,
Just an update? Yep.
Yes.
Thank you, Commission, Mayor Decker and Commission. Just wanted to get the last update of where we're at with recycling. It is going to begin in October, so this will be the last update before it actually began. So the cart delivery was finished on Saturday, September 22nd, so everybody should have received their recycle cart. The compactor that we purchased for inside the Baylor building, it's additional compactor to compact the recycling material and then push into the new recycle trailer, is installed, and one of the new recycle trailers is at the Baylor. If you drive by or go out there, take a look at it. So it has been there, and we had a couple issues with the compactor trailer and the compactor connecting, but we got that resolved this week. The other compactor trailer is on its way. The recycle kickoff event is this Saturday, the 29th. And I just want to talk about that a little bit again. There's a live DJ. The poster contest winner will be announced. And if you've been out to Public Works recently, we've had multiple artwork from the school, from grade schools on recycle, and it's been really fun to see it out there, something different that we don't see at Public Works very often. There'll be crafts for kids, some booths, photo booth, food vendors, story time, and there will be the DEMCON recycling trailer, which I've seen in Shakopee, and it's really worth looking at, and it's got interactive displays. So that is this Saturday, the 29th. I do want to thank staff and our new recycling coordinator for all the work that's been done on this. It's been quite a workload in a process. Speaking of the coordinator, she's continuing the education for the public. She's visiting classrooms throughout the community, and she's busy doing that, and I think doing it very well. The Fleet Mind software, they installed this cameras and the software in all our garbage trucks. That should be fully operational in the next week. And as I said, the installation is complete on that. Well, one more thing. Once we begin operation of the recycling in October, your residential fees will increase as proposed on the recycle plan. So that's what's going on the recycle side. If there's any questions, concerns, you can sure talk to me or talk to Rachel Schumacher, who's our recycling coordinator, and she would be glad to answer questions. I know we have calls coming in continually all day long on this recycling and trying to educate the public what we're going to do, how we're going to do it. So I thank everybody for their patience, and sure answer any questions anybody has.
Mr. Zuroff, I guess the only comment that I would have up front is I've had a few people just confused on pickup dates, because I think some of the cans, when they were delivered, I know there was a little packet inside of the
Right.
cans, and some of the cans were tipped over, and I think the packets flew away for some individuals. And they can find that information on your website.
Should be on the website, and if you can't put it on the website or don't want to go to the website, you can sure call.
Yeah.
There should have been a calendar enclosed,
Right.
But if you don't have it, there's A and B week. This is not going to be picked up every week. It's going to be every other week. So that A and B just tells you which which week it's going to be picked up depending on your area of town.
You know, the other comment I've heard is there's a lot of cans that are full already, so they're waiting.
And you can also download the app, because I have it, and it sends you an alert when to put out your recycling.
And that's the easiest, to me, that's the easiest. I've had that app forever, and it'll, you know, for regular pickup and then for recycle, it'll let you know too. That, it'll be an app on your cell phone, but also, we had a lot of people today, you know, questioning too. The Dickinson Works can also send you an email. It can call your landline and leave a voicemail on your landline, as long as you're set up. So there's 3 or 4 ways of communicating with you. To me, that's somebody reminding me is the easiest way to go.
Great information.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Any questions for Mr. Zorro?
For tomorrow.
Hearing no questions, we'll move into planning, and first item up in planning this evening is the final plat for the Odyssey Theater, and Planning Director Hadley will be handling that.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is for Odyssey First Edition. It's a final plat. It's a resolution 25-2018, I believe. It's been heard by the Planning Commission, worked through on staff, and I believe that we've met all the requirements for a final plat. There is a DA that subsequently will be discussed by Attorney Murtha, and staff would recommend approval of this. I believe Attorney Murtha has a comment on an easement on the plat.
I do, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. It's actually a comment about an easement that is not on the plat. So currently, there is a CenturyLink easement that would otherwise be on this plat. However, through discussions and to expedite the process, but still making sure that everything is accurate, the concern is that the easement, the Odyssey has been in communication with CenturyLink. They have agreed to give up their easement that would otherwise be in the area of construction. However, it won't be vacated until construction is complete, but the plat needs to be filed prior to that construction. And so in the interest of compromise, what Odyssey has agreed to do is provide us with documentation from CenturyLink indicating that they are in fact going to be giving up that easement, and it has to be an official documentation, that's something that's going to be filed, and that will be provided prior to or at the time of the closing of the property. So we will have that so that the plat can be filed. We know that that will be accurate, and then the easement will be vacated subsequent to that time. So it would be, we're just informing you of that, of why it's not on there.
Is there a reason they won't vacate it prior?
Turn that over to.
I mean, I've never heard of something like that before.
I knew this was going to come up. Brian Sieve here, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission. It's really a chicken and the egg scenario is really what it is. CenturyLink has a pretty big line running through the property or the property right now, which is actually not in the alley right away. It's actually part of the city property where MDU's utilities are running actually in the alleyway, which is the public right-of-way, which doesn't require a separate easement. This is all stuff that's come up in the educational process. I thought I've seen it all. I guess I haven't. As part of the compromise, because CenturyLink doesn't want to give up their easement over the land, we have to replat the land in order to move their easement, but replatting the land would leave a problem for the title company. There would be an easement running through a new platted piece of ground that we need to build over, and it was causing all kinds of issues with the title company, giving us insurance on the land, and which would affect lendability against the land and all kinds of other things. So the compromise is we will agree to reroute CenturyLink's easement. They don't want to give it up until they actually relocate the work or the work is completed. But they still have their rights. They will still have a recorded document easement, even though it won't be shown on the plat. So this happens in course in a number of other developments. There's some interpretation, legal interpretation, whether it has to be listed on the plat as well, or can just be a privately recorded document. We tend to take the view of the latter, for good reason. We're a private developer. CenturyLink has to provide this document to us. We will agree that we will not close on the land, obviously, or record the plat, which would happen simultaneously at the closing, until CenturyLink gives us a document that's in form, that's satisfactory to all parties, us as well as the city, because once this closes, the problem becomes ours, and we do not want CenturyLink to be able to back out of vacating an easement once they relocate their line. So it's really a document here to protect more us than you at this point, but it's taken quite a bit of work with all the parties, a lot of work, matter of fact, to get all of this coordinated and worked out and get everybody's needs and concerns addressed.
All right.
Okay, any other questions? Hearing no questions, thank you for that information.
Thank you.
There are no more questions for Mr. Hadley or Mrs. Murtha. I'd look for a motion on resolution 25-2018.
Mr. President, make a motion to approve resolution number 25-2018.
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? Questions? Now we'll vote. Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Resolution, the motion to approve 25-2018 is approved. The next item up is a development agreement with Odyssey, and City Attorney Murtha will be handling that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, members of the commission. With regards to the development agreement that's before you, I believe when it was provided just earlier this afternoon, we indicated at the time that that it still needed to be formatted, and it will be subsequent to today. I just realized that apparently some of the formatting comments were included on there. So please disregard. But just to walk you through the development agreement, it's a little bit unusual because generally a development agreement is required for a larger development of land, but in this case, the entire parcel will be taken up by the building, and it's right in the middle of downtown. So we wanted to make sure that we addressed all of the issues up front. And what the conditions that are contained herein are the conditions that were spoken to verbally at the planning and zoning meeting where this was heard. So if you go to page 3, this page 3 really lists out the particulars for this project. The obligations with regards to utility coordination, street signs, sidewalks, lighting, water improvements, other improvements will be borne by the owner, which again will be Odyssey, so that's who the by owner who we're referring to. The specific ones for this project really start under E, which relates to, the first one is with regards to trees, that the owner is going to plant 9 new trees along the street or adjacent to the subject property within the public right-of-way. I will say that the what will also happen is the owner will give the city notice when they start construction when they've taken away the cement and asphalt, so that the city can retrieve the existing trees, which unfortunately don't line up exactly with how the building is going to be laid out, but the city is going to retrieve the existing trees and replant them later. And then the owner is going to put back in trees that match up and are spaced accordingly to the building. The next part is with regards to lights, and this relates to, Mr. Steve, I know had indicated prior to the meeting that we're good, but I just want to highlight so you can correct me if I'm misstating it, but that there will be 3 streetlights installed. The owner will be responsible for the cost of 2 of the decorative streetlights. The city will be responsible for the cost of 1 decorative light standard. And this also paragraph indicates the specific light standard where it's going to be. And Mr. Hadley can explain this better than I can, but if for some reason there needs to be other lights are implicated because of the way the utility is run, beyond this, the city is going to be responsible for those costs. So those, if more lights need to be replaced because they're somehow all connected to the same line, then the city will need to do that. So the owner will only be paying for the cost of 2, but will be incurring the cost of installing the 3. That's what I'm getting.
Brian Seaver here again from Odyssey. I believe we are providing an ad alternate to the city for the cost of the streetlight, which includes the labor from the electrician to install it, as well as the material components. Now again, that's at your option. You don't have to replace it. We're just going to provide you with an ad alternate. We will coordinate it with our work, so it doesn't have to be a separately bid item. We don't know what that will cost at some point in the future. I would expect that you will bring this matter before yourselves and determine whether that's something you want to go forward with. Thank you.
The other items were just with relation to the cost of the some signs, specific signs. There will be some additional signage in the parking area that the city will be responsible for. And I believe that that is pretty much the unique characteristics to this development agreement. Everything else is provisions that you generally see in these with regards to a bond that will be posted, governing law, non-waiver, and things like that. So I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for City Attorney Murtha?
I have one for Mr. Kubis. When you replat something, do you have to pay the park fees again? This is just a standard piece of language in here. If you're taking 4 lots and making them 1.
We haven't been, and Walter can correct me if I'm wrong, on a lot combination or a lot split, we haven't been requiring the park fees, but on a replat, I believe we have.
That's correct. And this is a publicly owned and public facility, and it's changing use, so anytime you're also changing the type of use, it's a courtesy to the park department. So whether or not they are, I haven't got a response back from them on whether or not, I'm going to guess that there probably is not a fee, but out of courtesy, we do have an agreement with them that we will send folks to them. It's at their discretion.
So if I replat something that's 100 lots, that's I've already paid the park fees on, and replat it down to 70 lots, I got to pay the park fees on 70 lots again?
I think that's how our ordinance is written.
Commissioner, just so this is part of the original plat for Dickinson, so I guarantee there wasn't any park fees.
I understand that, but that's not my question. So if I have a 100 lot development and I replat it down to 80 or 75 lots to make them bigger, and I've already paid the park fees, I would have to pay them park fees again.
I believe that's how our ordinance is written.
I think that's something we can address in planning.
Yeah.
We have Chapter 34 discussions coming up this month, or next month.
I responded, I didn't know we were doing that, so.
I would also just comment that this language would be read as applicable. So if, of course, the park says that they're not charging fees for this replat, no fees would be required.
Because we're making it into one lot, I'm assuming, right, with the replat?
Well, one lot that will house the Cineplex, and then it ends up actually being 3 other lots, 2 city parking lots and 1 small lot that would be temporarily owned by the post office.
Lot 4.
Right, lot 4 would, in the interim, be the post office.
Yeah,
lot.
so they would only have to pay fees on lot 2, or their lot? I don't know, I don't understand. Or would we be paying fees on 4 lots, even that little sliver of the alley to the park?
I guess the fees are based on square footage, I believe, so.
I thought it's per,
And it's based on ownership, so I mean, the public, or publicly owned properties aren't going to be assessed
so
those
they'd be
fees.
just on their one lot then? I thought it was a per lot cost.
It might be per lot.
It's like 5.
With zoning. kind
Yeah,
of
different zoning
categories,
is
right.
different, yeah. Okay, that's my only questions. Thanks.
Any other questions on the development agreement? Mrs. Murtha, are you complete?
I am.
Okay. Questions, comments, staff? Now I look for a motion on this development agreement.
Move to approve.
A motion to approve the development agreement with Odyssey,
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion, comments? Now we'll vote. Ms. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The motion to approve the development agreement with Odyssey is approved. Next, we'll move into a parking and no-build easement agreement.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the commission. This agreement is required by the purchase agreement that the city entered into with Odyssey Entertainment. It details, in the purchase agreement, it detailed that the city would be agreeing to a parking and no build easement, which is permanent. Also in this agreement is a temporary construction easement. And I will just refresh the commission's recollection, but again, all these items were agreed to in the purchase agreement, which then stated that the specific details of these easements would be worked out in a separate agreement, which would be then approved and recorded. And so that is the purpose of this document. You also have some exhibits, and they go along with this easement. So the first specific easement is described in paragraph 2, which is a parking and access easement, which states that the city will be, for lots 1 and 3, they're going to be remain city property, and you're promising that they will remain parking areas, and these parking areas will be available for patrons of Odyssey and members of the public. It is a non-exclusive easement. It's just saying that this is going to remain a parking, these will be parking areas, and that we're not, the city will prohibit overnight 24-hour parking, including signage. So that was the signage I was referencing when I indicated that the city would also be providing some signage in this area. However, it's on city land. There is a no-build easement as well. This was also part of the purchase agreements described in paragraph 3. The no-build easement relates to the promise of the city that no vertical structures are going to be put on these parking lots. Essentially, that they will remain for parking, and even if you wanted to put a parking garage, which is probably too small anyway to do that, there is, that you're not going to put in any vertical structures on this. It's going to remain a flat parcel, and we're going to maintain it as such. And in our discussions, it was my understanding the reason for that had both to do with the parking issue, but also to do with the proximity to the building, So ingress, egress doors, as well as some lighting issues for the construction. So that was agreed to. Neither of these are really going to be going into effect until, of course, the construction is done. So that's when that will happen, when that's all cleaned up. There's a temporary construction easement described in Section 4, which indicates that during the period of construction, the city will agree to provide these areas for Odyssey's use for the staging for the construction, that we're not going to allow anybody to be parking in there, that they will be, that they agree to, again, repair, replace, put back in the parking area when they are all done. However, if any third parties were to bring claims against the city for any personal injury or damage to property, that Odyssey will indemnify the city for such claims, including the cost of defensive litigation. The remaining paragraphs are consistent again with an easement. No waiver amendment governing law, which is for North Dakota, and the like. So that is the total of the parking and no build easement, which will be executed at the time of closing, which we hope to have occur very shortly.
Okay. Any questions for City Attorney Murtha on the parking and no build easement agreement? Hearing no questions, I would look for a motion.
Mr. President, I move we approve the parking and no build easement agreement.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion to approve parking and no build easement agreement is passed. We have one last. We have a sidewalk maintenance agreement. Am I correct?
Yes. Mr. President, members of the commission, the sidewalk maintenance agreement is not something that was that was required by the purchase agreement, nor is it something that came about as a result of the development agreement. Actually, it was in the process of platting the area. It was determined that Odyssey wanted to have a sidewalk next to its building, next to the theater. However, that sidewalk would be on city land. So instead of increasing the size of the purchase area, the sidewalk is going to be on city land. It's going to be benefiting Odyssey Theater because the city wouldn't otherwise have needed a sidewalk there. And so in consideration of that benefit, Odyssey will be entering into a sidewalk maintenance agreement indicating they will maintain that sidewalk, keep it free and clear of debris, show snowballing, that type of thing, when the need arises, and that this easement agreement will remain attached for so long as this building is operated as a theater. So even if Odyssey were to, again, sell it to a new owner, many years into the future, and who continue to operate as the theater, that theater would still need to maintain that sidewalk. So it's technically a sidewalk maintenance easement agreement it's describing the purpose of the easement, which is on the plat, which benefits Lot 2. And I don't have anything further on it.
Any questions for Mrs. Murtha? No questions or comments? I'd look for a motion on the sidewalk agreement.
Move to approve, Mr. President.
A motion to approve with a second.
Second.
Any further discussion, questions? Now we'll vote. Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Sidewalk agreement, the motion to approve the sidewalk agreement is approved. Thank you, staff, for all the hard work, and thank you, Brian.
I just wanted to say Attorney Murtha and the rest of the city staff did a great job. Mr. Hadley, there was a lot of hard work, a lot of technical details that had to be worked out, and just want to say that on behalf of Odyssey and our attorney, Kevin Shakel, we've enjoyed working with you folks, and we look forward to the construction to start here very shortly. And you know, it's going to be a great facility. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
All right, let's see, we have nothing left in planning, building and codes, nothing, public issues of city concern not on the agenda. If anybody from the public wishes to come forward and have a city concern, please come forward and state what your concern is to the city commission. Anyone from the public? Seeing no one from the public has any concerns, I'll close the public issues section. And commissioners, before we go into executive, anything that commissioners wish to speak to? Any concerns, comments? Hearing nothing from the commissioners?
Before we go into executive session,
Yes.
just on this, on the first topic, which is about reused water, I just want to state in the public session that the city currently has a longer-term contract with a refinery for the sale of reused water, and then entered into, at the beginning of this year, put out an RFP for a bid for additional vendors to purchase reused water from the city. And that was awarded, but it was 1-year duration. So the purpose of this discussion is to determine how the city is going to be contracting going forward now that there are, again, there's even more interest in the purchase of reused water. That was for the benefit of the public.
Okay. We have I'm looking for a motion on executive session to discuss confidential commercial data related to the sale of reused water and negotiating strategy for contracts for the sale of reused water pursuant to NDCC, the North Dakota Century Code, 44-04-18.4, 44-04-19.1, paragraph 9, and 44-04-19.2.
To read it all, or you need a motion on each one?
Oh, we only get to go, we have
Yeah,
to
we have
come
to go
in and out.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I should
Yes,
be getting
you have
used
to
to
read it all.
I should be getting used to these by now, I guess. I'd make a motion to what Scott said.
Second.
We have a motion to enter executive session for negotiating strategy. And a second. All in favor? State aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We will move to executive session.
I'll just say that now that we're back in the public session, out of the executive session, that staff has received direction from the commission with regards to further exploring options for the sale of reused water, so that when we have additional information to report, we will bring that back. And then with regards to the next item, again, for the public session, we'll see. I can tell you that you may recall that there was a dispute with Vite, who was a contractor, with regards to a change order amount. And if I'm horrible with the terminology, I'll refer to Engineer Kupas to correct me. But there was a difference in amount, and as the city's response was provided to Vite, and Vite has requested arbitration under the terms of the contract. And so the purpose of this next request for executive session is to discuss next steps in response to that request for arbitration.
I would look for a motion to move into executive session for attorney consultation on the Vite update.
Moved as stated.
just for the record, this would be in reference to the statutory sections that are noted on the agenda.
A motion to move to executive session
Second.
with a second. All in favor of moving to executive session, state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we'll move to executive session.
Back in the public session, and staff has received direction with regards to how to proceed with the arbitration demand from Vite. We have an added third agenda item, and that is to continue contract negotiations for the city administrator position. And again, for the public record, at the special commission meeting last Wednesday, it was announced at the end that the city would be making an offer to Mr. Goff and proceeding with contract negotiations. This is a continuation of those contract negotiations, and I need to provide you all with the appropriate statutory authority, so if you'll bear with me, I'll provide that. It is 4404 19.1 subdivision 9 and 4404 19.2.
Okay, I pulled up the last one, so.
Oh, you had it?
Yeah.
All right, great.
I'd look for a motion in executive session to discuss confidential city administrator applicant.
No.
Oh,
That part is no longer confidential. It's
okay.
just for contract negotiations.
okay, for contract negotiations then. I'd look for a motion. Pursuant to the North Dakota Century Code that City Attorney Murtha stated.
So moved.
A motion with a second. All in favor of moving in the executive session, state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We'll move into executive. We are exited executive session for consultations on a city administrator contract. I've received instruction to go forward with contract negotiations, and I will proceed. Is there anything else from the commissioners? Not, I'd look for a motion to adjourn. A motion to adjourn? We're adjourned.